Hello. Here you have your friendly neighborhood Ugaritologist again in kind of an addition to the video on pharyngeals as part of the series on banal yet awesome things out of Semitic historical linguistics and biblical studies. That video was on the fact that quote unquote Westerners are not, or at least need not, be unable to pronounce the pharyngeal sounds of ancient Semitic languages, Hebrew specifically, classical Hebrew. I got a couple of comments on that video, comments that showed a certain unease in relation to the way in which I pronounce the sound ein or ein. That is the voiced pharyngeal fricative, and I just want to comment on that a little. Like I said in the video in question, the realization of this sound varies a bit throughout modern languages in the Semitic family that have the sound to this day. You can hear it as a pure pharyngeal, actually approximant, which is a sort of gulpy sound. Ah, ah, Ailion, Ailion. And that can be weaker or stronger. Ailion or just Ailion means the highest in Hebrew. Or you can hear it as an epiglottal trill, which is a realization one often hears, for example, in Arabic from, say, Iraq today. And that's a much, well, what could be described as a much harsher sound, like ah. So you can go either weak pharyngeal approximant, Ailion, or the strong epiglottal trill variant, Ailion. And like I said, both of these variants of the Ein sound seem to have occurred throughout the history of Semitic languages. We can't be sure exactly which was used when. And like I said, there are variants even today. You can also hear variants such as a glottal stop that is pharyngealized. So you have different realizations. You have the pharyngeal approximant, the gulpy thing, the epiglottal trill, the sort of more harsh sound, and you have realizations like pharyngalized glottal stops. And like I also said in the video, all of these three would probably have occurred during the history of Hebrew and other ancient Semitic languages during the histories of those languages. And actually, there may be some data from the ancient world showing, or at least suggesting, this kind of difference. For example, something I've been working on myself is the fact that there are a couple of words in Ugaritic which should have had an ein in them. Ein is a preserved phoneme with a letter for it in Ugaritic in Bronze Age Syria. But there are a couple of words, like the word paऽmatu, which means something like time, as in 7 times. It should have been paӓmtu, but it's not. It's paӓmtu. And there are a couple of names that show the same thing. They show a glottal stop instead of the expected ein. And there are a couple of other transcriptions from Semitic languages into other languages of the ancient Near East that seem to show the same transformation of that pharyngeal fricative or approximant into a glottal stop. For example, there are two renderings of the divine name Baal, with its feminine version Baalat, the Lord and the Lady, into hieroglyphic Luwian. And one of them uses the ch signs of hieroglyphic Luwian to render the Ain there, like in Pachalati, which is Baalat, that is the lady. But there's also a name which in the Semitic language from which this was transliterated, or rather transcribed, was probably Baali Malik. That is just rendered into hieroglyphic Luwian as Pa'ali Mali without any ch used to render the ain. And I've done work on this. I published an article partly on this, and I argue there that this ain-less pronunciation is due to a sort of international scribal koine that didn't really realize the pharyngeal in its full way due to, well, interference from languages that didn't have the sound. But it could also, of course, be due to the fact that some dialects, ancient Semitic dialects, had weaker forms of the ain than than others. I mean, this putative Koine dialect, if I'm correct in that having existed, could have gotten partly this glottal stop-like pronunciation of the ein from one or several Semitic dialects that had a weaker ein. So there maybe we can see a difference between the rough epiglottal trill-like ein and the weaker ein. And before anybody asks, no, this has nothing to do with the difference between ein and rein, which is a totally different letter. So this has nothing to do with that. But my point is that the stronger epiglottal pronunciations, the more gulpy pure pharyngeal approximant realizations and the ones which were just pharyngalized glottal stops, all of these would probably have existed in ancient times as well. And we possibly actually have evidence for that. So that's what I wanted to say. When I read Hebrew, I often do use the stronger epiglottal version of the ein, or rather ein, for emphasis, but not exclusively so. But like I said, in ancient times, I think both of these would have coexisted. And yeah, the text we know today as the Bible still read best in their original languages. Thank you.